The FG-42 or Sturmgewehr 42 is, to me at least, one of, if not the sexiest gun available in Battlefield 5 at launch. It's definitely one of the most iconic, and also, thanks to its place as ultimate LMG for close encounter combat, it's most definitely one of the fan favorites amongst the support weaponry, besides of course the MG42 and the KE7. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually any good. So in today's weapon review, what I want to talk about is both the stats of the weapon, how it compares to some of its competition, both within the LMG category of weaponry, but also outside, specifically looking at the assault rifles, given how similar they do perform to LMGs in Battlefield 5. We'll then talk about what specializations I would be recommending for using this weapon, and of course how to get the most out of this weapon in terms of playstyle when using it on the battlefield. Starting off then with the stats, because we always do, thanks to its maximum damage at 25 and minimum damage at 18.5, you're looking at a 4 to 6 shot kill depending on your range. That is a 4 shot kill in absolute extreme close quarters between 0 and 10 meters, a 5 shot kill between 10 and 50 meters, so your average medium range, as well as quite a bit of close quarters actually, and at longer ranges, medium long ranges, from 50 meters onwards, you're looking at a 6 shot kill, never more than that when hitting your target, however, in the upper body. And of course, if you hit those headshots, you'll be downing targets in no time. Its fire rate is actually fast. Overall, in terms of how automatic weapons work in Battlefield 5, it's fast. In terms of LMGs, it's extremely fast. It's the fastest firing LMG, as of course everybody knows, at 670 rounds per minute. Its magazine size is regrettably the smallest to counteract its fantastic fire rate at 20 rounds available. Its muzzle velocity pretty good at 740 meters per second, meaning hitting those moving targets shouldn't be too difficult, at least not in terms of the muzzle velocity that this gun has to offer. Its reload is actually pretty good, which is a relief given how often you're going to be reloading this gun, but it's only good if you manage to have one or more bullets left in your mag, that's to say one bullet left in your chamber, thanks to its short reload of 2.25. Because if you don't have any bullets left, you're going to be looking at a long reload, which at 3.45 seconds could actually get you killed in close encounter combat. It isn't exactly something you want to be going through too often, especially when you really need to be firing your gun instead of reloading your gun. Now, recoil is roughly mid-range, on the upper end of mid-range for this weapon, given of course its fire rate that isn't really a surprise, with 0.76 on the vertical recoil and 0.262 on the horizontal, that is to the left and right. What we should add here is that on the vertical recoil side, the actual recoil value changes over time while you're firing the weapon in a fully automatic state, by negative 0.04 per shot, which, as far as I understand weapon mechanics in Battlefield 5, would mean that your second shot is actually not 0.76 degrees of vertical recoil, instead 0.72. The shot after that, 0.68, and so on, which means this weapon actually decreases in vertical recoil over time. And that regrettably isn't going to be too impactful, because not only are you not going to be firing this weapon in a fully automatic mode at medium long range targets, but you're also going to be trying to control your vertical recoil anyway, so this may be a small aid to that, but not going to make a big difference, given of course that it doesn't affect horizontal recoil, as far as at least I've understood so far. Moving on then from recoil to spread. Base values here are 0.15 for standing still and aiming down sight, 0.4 for aiming down sight while moving, and 4.5 for hip fire. So traditional as to be expected from LMGs, they're absolutely atrocious at hip firing, as they have been in most of the Battlefield games in the past. With the stats then out of the way, let's talk specializations. And personally to me, it's almost an exclusively right side upgrade path, simply because I tend to try and play weapons to their strengths, not necessarily their weaknesses, and hip fire is very much a weakness of any and all LMGs in Battlefield 5, and such I'm not going to try and improve an already poor hip fire, because it's at best only going to be mediocre. I'm going to try and improve this weapon's ADS fire, because that is what I'm generally going to be using it in, because it's just not usable in hip fire scenarios. And if I'm going for an exclusively close quarter weapon, LMGs are the wrong category of weapon to be going for in the first place anyway. You're much better with a Tommy gun or a Suomi, or even an M1907 SF for that matter. So when it comes to the specific upgrades, in the first instance, I believe there's a fair choice to be made between custom stock or quick aim. Personally, for me, it's going to be quick aim, so I can ADS faster. After that, it's pretty clear. Barrel bedding for that improved accuracy while stationary, the ported barrel for the decrease in horizontal recoil, probably the most impactful upgrade that you're going to make to this weapon. And lastly, of course, then that lightened stock for that better ADAD spam movement, 60% faster movement while aiming down sight. This leaves you in the position where you have a weapon that is extremely precise, has quite a bit of recoil, however, and isn't so easy to control at medium-long ranges, especially because you quickly run out of bullets, which is where we start talking about how to get the most out of this weapon and how it compares to some of its chief competitors. Now the FG42 can absolutely tear somebody a new one if it's aiming down sight and it gets the jump on somebody. If you come up against a medic with one of the better close quarter SMGs, you're generally going to lose a close quarter firefight if they get the jump on you or if they're AD-ADing everywhere. You don't have the mag capacity, you don't have the hip fire, and you don't have the damage output. But if you can stay that step back, say outside of that 10-20 meter range, then you suddenly have a weapon that is out damaging almost everything out there. Thanks to its better damage model versus the SMGs, alongside its relatively good fire rate, you've just got a great combination. And it's no surprise that I like this kind of weapon because, interestingly enough, its counterpart in the assault class, the Sturmgewehr 1.5, is also one of my favorite weapons available to that class. And they behave very similar in terms of their stats and their damage output. They are very much close to medium range weapons that can, in certain scenarios, do a little bit of damage at medium long range, can of course do some extreme close quarters if they have to, relatively flexible, but aren't necessarily specialized in any given range other than maybe that small distance between close quarters and medium long range, those few meters where you can really start to just dominate with this weapon. It's absolutely a weapon that you have to be using in ADS fire almost exclusively, as previously mentioned, and it's a weapon that needs some decent mag management. You're just going to run out of bullets if you take on more than 2 targets at once, and even if you are taking 2 targets on at once or with 1 magazine, you really need to be making sure that your shots hit, because at 670 rounds per minute, that magazine is empty real fast, which means it's a gun that's surprisingly actually a little bit more positioning based than you might think, especially down to that magazine size actually being the main cause for that. In terms of comparative performance then, well, it's essentially a Sturmgewehr 1.5 for the support class. They have very similar stats. It's slightly more stable in terms of its horizontal recoil, but other than that, there's no major difference that really is worth pointing out. I mean, recoil values are generally within 0.1234 of each other when it comes to these two weapons. The Sturmgewehr 1.5 does have the larger magazine size, and it is the more accurate weapon in pretty much any scenario, regrettably, which means that the FG42 kind of is, I guess you could say, a slightly worse version. Then again though, it does have a bipod, which means if you're going for long range targets and you find yourself in a position where you're not instantly going to get sniped if you go prone or set up on a ledge, the FG42 actually can extend way beyond what any of the assault rifles can, other than of course the Recoil, which of course too does also have a bipod to enable it to do that. Versus the LMG category of weaponry, it's basically balanced pretty well. It's clearly the most close quarter capable weapon available. It's not exclusively focused on that, so it will compete with weapons such as the KE7, which lack a little bit in terms of damage output, but have better recoil and generally are easier to use and a little bit larger magazine size as well, meaning that they're just more capable at those medium long ranges where the FG42 really will struggle. In a capable hands, however, I think there's an argument to be made that the FG42 absolutely will be able to keep up with the KE7, maybe even surpass it. I don't think it's necessarily worse than the KE7, it's just slightly different in where it's specialized in. A little bit more close quarter versus the KE7 focusing a little bit more on that medium long range. That being said, however, that wraps it pretty much up for the FG42. Is it the best weapon available? Most certainly not. Is it the worst weapon? No, it's a weapon with a clearly defined purpose, a clearly defined engagement distance, close quarter-ish, medium range, and a little bit into the long range when bipoded absolutely long range, with a caveat for its flexibility in its small magazine size, and somewhat outclassed by the Sturmgewehr 1.5, leaving it in a pretty good position if you ask me. I've enjoyed using it, I continue to enjoy using it, and it is my choice of weaponry, especially when I'm playing in an active supportive squad where we're going for on cap on the objective, and it's a map that allows for a bit more close medium range, because in combination with a good squad, being able to support your team at those more close engagement distances as support player can be invaluable, especially when working with other assaults to take down tanks. Being able to throw down ammunition boxes so that they can have additional dynamite or additional Panzerfausts to take people out is actually saved my and my squad's bacon many times before. You can also help take tanks out as support player, of course, with the right gadgetry as well. So it's an invaluable role to play and definitely most enjoyable. Let me know down below in the comments what you think, however, of the FG42 and how it performs compared to some of your favorite weapons, both in the support class of weaponry, but also in the assault class and other weaponry available out there as infantry player. If you found the video helpful, interesting, or at all entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below in the comments. Hit me up with your usual video suggestions over on Twitter. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 5 video.